Namaste everyone. So this is yet another of our Nakshatra videos, and this one in particular will be dedicated to Moola. What a fascinating lunar mention. If you look at all the other Nakshatras, they are basically portions of the sky, constellations containing different stars. But Moola is quite different, because at the very heart of Mula Nakshatra, we do not have bright stars, we have a supermassive black hole, around which our entire solar system is rotating, together with other solar systems. And all of them together, along with this supermassive giant black hole at the center, they form our Milky Way galaxy. And the external, the outer and the inner arm of this Milky Way galaxy can be seen also in our night sky. Around this part of the zodiac where we have Mrigashira Nakshatra, you can see the outer arm of our Milky Way galaxy. While opposite, where we have Mula Nakshatra, you can actually see the inner part, the very core, the center of our Milky Way galaxy, which is this supermassive giant black hole. So no wonder that Vedic seers attributed to this particular portion of the sky, this nakshatra, this constellation, so-called, they attributed as a deity known as Nirriti, who is a deity of chaos, disorder, big transformation. That's what black hole essentially is, right? That's what it symbolically represents. And yet other scriptures attribute to the very same nakshatra another deity, Prajapati, who is our divine ancestor, who is Brahma, the creator, who is our very origin, because it is believed that as much as very likely, after a long span of time, eventually our solar system is going to merge with this supermassive black hole, it is also believed that it is from this solar system, from this supermassive black hole, that actually everything in our Milky Way galaxy emerged. It's the origin itself. And hence the name, Moola, the roots. So it's a fascinating lunar mention, and let's have a closer look at it. So Moola means the root. And actually the very Shakti, or power of Mula Nakshatra, is called Mula Barhani Shakti, or the power to unroot, the power to unearth things. So as you can imagine, Mula in its very nature, it's a very revolutionary nakshatra. Natives who are born with strong placements in Mula Nakshatra, they are often not really satisfied, with very simplistic answers, with very shallow approach to life. They always want to get to the very root of all things, unearth, uncover the truth, uncover the reality, dig deep, and find really what's hiding there below, the level of our awareness. So Mula Nakshatra, it's always very revolutionary in nature, and it's always very much oriented about firstly looking into the past, into the roots, but then also seeing what did not work in the past and how can we change it? How can we transform the past, let go of the past, unroot the past, and actually make space for something new? And this is where the deity of this nakshatra, of course, comes into play, because Nirriti is the god of chaos, and that very process of unrooting and changing the past can be very chaotic in nature sometimes. Later on, Nirriti started to be seen also as a goddess. And even later, in our times, Nirriti is often identified with Mother Kali herself, who is the very goddess of the passage of time, Kala, the goddess of transformation, and who with her dark complexion is this perfect metaphor, you could say, of a black hole, the goddess who actually absorbs all the negativities, but also helps us change the past tendencies, helps us change the past and meet something that is new, so that we may move forward and grow. So similarly, as you can imagine, Mula natives are often very progress-oriented. So as you can already see, Mula Nakshatra brings with itself very transformative energies. It helps us to transform things into something new. And of course, naturally, Mula natives are very oriented on progress. They do not like repeating same patterns over and over again, especially if they don't see higher meaning or sense in them. They are more into bringing, this wind of change. And very often they can bring an incredibly valuable perspective into how we can look at things differently. There are often, these people amongst us who have really the courage to question everything that is wrong with currently operating systems and question things, question status quo, and try to go really to the very root of the problem. And through that, make space for something new, some new quality to emerge. So this quality of unrooting, of unearthing, is also a metaphor of this eternal search for truth. Mula natives have special love for truth, for seeing the reality of things, for seeing things how they are. Integrity is similarly very, very important for them. This is why they don't trust easily, things which are just on the surface. They really like to go to the very root of everything, to the very root of every problem. But also on spiritual level, Mula natives are often the ones who will ask these really important life questions, like, who am I? What am I even doing in this existence? What is my higher purpose? And of course, this reflects the energy of Prajapati or Brahma, who is also considered to be the presiding deity of Mula Nakshatra. And it's so incredibly symbolic because sometimes this galactic center, this supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, is also seen or called as Vishnu Nabi, the navel of Lord Vishnu. And of course, from the navel of Lord Vishnu, it is believed, sprouts this beautiful lotus on which Lord Brahma is seated, the creator, from which the entire creation sprouts. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, you can find this beautiful story describing these first, let's say, days, years, however you want to call it, the first moments of Brahma as the very first born being in this universe. And it describes it so beautifully how confused is he, because he looks everywhere in every direction and he sees darkness only. There's nothing there. So Brahma himself begins to ask these questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? Where do I come from? What is my actual purpose here? So what Brahma does? Brahma begins to search throughout this whole unmanifested yet universe to try to find any answer, but the only thing he encounters is this darkness all around him. There are no answers in the outside. Where Brahma finally, starts to finding his answers is when he turns within and begins to meditate on his very identity, on his very self. And through his meditation, it is revealed to him that yes, his ancestry is divine. He came into being from the very navel of Supreme Lord, Narayana, and he has beautiful task of creation. So similarly, Mula Nakshatra often takes their natives onto this spiritual search of discovering their true identity, their true purpose. But it may often not give plenty of answers if you look at them just in the outside. There's always, this inherent call to go deeper within and understand, where is my true root? Where do I truly come from? And who I truly am in my essence. Now, having said that, since truth, and integrity and this eternal search for truth is so important for Mula natives, another quality that is very important for them is the meaning. Mula natives always search for meaning in things. If they lack meaning, into doing something, if they don't really understand why they are supposed to do this or that, they won't be that willing to do it. They always look for deeper meaning in all things, which is why they often question things, because they want to understand things better. After all, we need to understand that Mula Nakshatra is located in the very beginning of sidereal Sagittarius and forms the Mula Trikona of Jupiter, the planet of higher wisdom, higher understanding, also intuitive understanding. This is why Mula natives are often so strongly, driven to search for meaning into everything they do and everything that happens in their lives. And that, of course, also often brings them on spiritual search. Because Mula Nakshatra is ruled by Ketu and resides in the sign of Jupiter, and of course forms the Mula Trikona of Jupiter, these natives are also highly intuitive. They have very strong connection to their inner feeling, to their intuition, but also they are very good in connecting to the external, explicit knowledge, also the book knowledge. They're very good in research as well, because again, they want to know the truth. It does not matter so much for them, how are they going to find it? They just want to find it, they want to know it. There's this hunger for higher wisdom often present in them. But it's incredibly important to understand for Mula natives that as much as they can be very good, in researching things often, is that the truest and the most important answers in their lives, they will always come from deep within them, from their actual intuition, not from external sources. Now, shadow work is something that often may be quite dear topic to Mula natives. And first reason for that is that, of course, as you already know, natives with strong grahas placed there in Mula Nakshatra, they value integrity so much. They value embodiment so much. For them, they value authenticity far more, even if being authentic means that sometimes, you are a little bit dysregulated, even if some shadow parts of you come through. But for them, this is far more valuable, than just being fake and pretending that you are somebody else than who you truly are. So very often, it is so that the very destiny of natives who have key planets in Mula Nakshatra is to actually do this shadow work on these really strong primal emotions like fear and shame, and go to the very root of the problems, understand what's blocking them there. And it's very important to understand, because if you have absolutely any planet seated there in Mula Nakshatra, especially if by any chance it is somewhere close to Gandanta, which means in the very early degrees of Mula Nakshatra, or if it dwells in the Ashtamamsha pada of Mula Nakshatra, which is it when the fourth pada of Mula, where any planet seated there will be actually traveling to 8th place from itself, Cancer in the D9 or Navamsha chart. If you have those placements there, very likely in order to improve this sphere of life that this planet is ruling for you, you will need to go to the very root of the problems and face your own shadows. That's also what Goddess Kali essentially represents. The courage and the authenticity required for us to face our own dark side, our own shadows. And luckily, very often natives who have planets placed in Mula Nakshatra, they do have that courage, to face the darker side of themselves. And indeed, that often is a very important life lesson for them. So since Mula Nakshatra is all about going to the very root of all things, it's also the nakshatra ruled by Ketu. And even the very symbol of Mula Nakshatra are reticulated roots, which can be, somehow a resemblance of our own DNA strand within us. Very often, if there is any planet seated in Mula Nakshatra, in particular if it's very close to Gandanta, there is a lot of ancestral karma accumulated there. And it might be that in order for you to move forward in life, you need to resolve that first in some form, in some ways. And this is also very understandable because if you look at the 9th house from Mula Nakshatra and the Adanatara from Mula Nakshatra, the 19th star connected to the ancestry, it's ruled by Maga, this very star of Pitris, another nakshatra of Ketu. So very often natives who have any placement in Mula Nakshatra, they might be blocked to move farther in life because there is something unresolved, from previous generations that still keeps playing out throughout their lives. And very often it will require from those natives a decent amount of self-work, especially, as I mentioned, if a planet happens to dwell very, very close to Gandanta. In such a case, very often you may see that even in the relations with current family, with living family members, there might be, a lot of tensions, strange karmas, strange situations happening. And unfortunately, how this placement was viewed in the past, there was lots of, vilification of children born with moon in Mula Nakshatra, because it was believed, really wrongly in my opinion, that, oh, this child will bring misfortune to the family or calamity to the family. I personally don't see it that way. I see it in a way, that calamity was already there in the family before the child was born. But then when the child is born with such a placement, which is all about unrooting the things and bringing truth to the light, when something like that happens, of course, it will challenge the old patterns. And very often the life of such a child won't be so easy, really, because there will be firstly this burden, of all ancestral limitations, ancestral karma for that individual to work through. And that is not always easy, of course. And another thing is, that very often there will be coinciding opposition from existing family or living family members. So it's really not an easy placement, but if you see something like that, you should always avoid vilifying it and seeing it as if something is wrong with the person, It's more that the burden of family karma often gets accumulated on the shoulders of that person. But this you will see with far higher intensity when it comes to specifically moon, and especially sitting very close to Gandanta or these early degrees of Moola. Normally, when this placement is already a little farther, or if it's different planets seated in Moola, you will not see it with such an intensity anymore. So like I mentioned to you already, Moola natives, they often ask this question, who I really am? What is really my identity? And because they are often born as somewhat different individuals with different views on the world, maybe a little eccentric sometimes, or simply not fitting it in, in their current life circumstances, they often end up even, questioning themselves. What I've seen a lot, that sometimes natives who have, especially moon in Mula Nakshatra, they end up being somewhat even shamed, by their family because they are different, they have different approach to life. And this takes us back, to Nirriti, this eccentric goddess who presides over Mula Nakshatra. The goddess who is the very antithesis of Lakshmi, who is Alakshmi. She represents chaos, disorder, doing things independently, not doing things exactly the way world wants you to do things. So because Moola natives often face, this wave of opposition coming at them from the external world, they often end up questioning who I truly am. And this, throughout the years, usually leads them to more and more sophisticated spiritual search and discovering their spiritual identity. And really, discovering that they can allow themselves to just be themselves exactly how they are, without necessarily always complying to expectations of others, and still find, in their own out-of-the-box way, a lot of fulfillment in life. So like I mentioned to you already, Mula natives, they can be a little or a lot eccentric sometimes, pretty much depending on which planet is actually seated out there in Mula Nakshatra. They like doing things their own way, and it's natural because they always question things. They always look for better ways to do something. They're not the people, who are going to blindly copy-paste the old patterns. They are going to question and will try to find better ways, So yes, sometimes they are viewed as eccentric, are living their life, very differently from other people and making very different life choices. But that's their path, and that's also the beauty of their path. Because Mula natives are these true, revolutionists. They are these true free thinkers. And I personally believe that our current world really needs people like that. Now, Mula Nakshatra can be also quite fiery and explosive and intense in nature. It can be quite impulsive sometimes because, of course, it's a Ketu root nakshatra and it's fierce in nature. So impulsiveness and doing things too fast or jumping to conclusions too quickly can be sometimes a shadow side of this nakshatra. Similarly to Jyeshta, for Mula natives is very, very important that they learn how to find better, self-regulation, so that also the emotions that emerge from them in their own personal process of healing, on their own spiritual journey, are not too overwhelming for them. And so they don't, kind of manifest outwardly in this very impulsive and spiky, manner. So Mula indeed can be a little bit explosive in nature sometimes, can be impulsive, can make decisions too fast. Which is why it's very important for this lunar mansion, especially if you have actual cruel planets seated there, to really take your time and review a little bit before you make some decision or some impulsive reaction. One of the key traits of Mula Nakshatra is independence. These are incredibly independent individuals, usually, who really value their freedom. Which is, by the way, another reason why I believe Mula Nakshatra was quite vilified in the past. Because especially it was not really seen, as a welcome quality, especially in a woman, to be extremely independent. And you will see that very often natives who have, especially female natives who have moon in Mula Nakshatra, they, for example, prefer to marry far later in life and sometimes not have children, right? It's actually a very common thing with Mula Nakshatra when moon resides there for females. And this wasn't seen as such a welcome quality in the past, which is another reason why it was vilified, why it was seen that way. But it's simply that Mula natives truly value their independence, their own quest for truth, their own spiritual quest, and they value their freedom, which is also a really beautiful thing and a really beautiful quality, if you think of that. Now, Mula is considered also to be quite karmic nakshatra because, of course, the very name, Mula, the roots, that which is hidden and yet gives birth to everything that grows in present moment. And of course, it's ruled by Ketu. And it is true, yes, Mula Nakshatra and the planets seated in Mula Nakshatra, they sometimes bring things like loss, things like poverty, things like grief, things like shame, all those things which are very difficult to deal with sometimes. But ultimately, we need to understand that Mula Nakshatra truly represents primarily this idea of transformation and purification, burning of our karma. An individual who has a key placement like moon in Mula Nakshatra is often tasked, with really purifying very often not just one's own karma, but uplifting entire lineage. And that sometimes means that the very life of individual, especially early life, might not unfold as smoothly. And it's also fine. It's also part of the process. It's what the soul has chosen, for this lifetime. Important thing to know about Mula Nakshatra is that essentially, because Mula means roots, right? And the very Shakti of Mula Nakshatra is to unroot things. It often makes me think of this mystical Ashvata tree that Lord Krishna talks about in chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. This tree that is originally rooted in spirit, but got so much rooted because of so much karma, desires, and attachments into this material world that sometimes, the only thing for you to free yourself again and get your true, spiritual freedom and independence back again is to just cut this tree down. And it's not an easy process. It can be a very messy process. But this liberation and this search for freedom is essentially what Mula Nakshatra always looks towards. It's the nakshatra of purification, it's the nakshatra of liberation and freeing ourselves from all of those old patterns that hold us back. So there's enormous potential in this nakshatra. And I hope that by watching this video, you got also to appreciate it a little more. Not just look at the dark side, of Mula Nakshatra, but to appreciate its energy as well and what it brings into our lives and the gifts it blesses us with. Of course, if you wish to learn more about Mula Nakshatra and the mythology associated with it, you can find in the link below the link to my long Nakshatra course, or you can also purchase just a single class dedicated just to Mula Nakshatra in order to learn a little more about it. So, thank you for watching this video and being with me today. I'll see you next time. Namaste.